Okay.
So this picture was taken the first morning of our trip. This is on one of the marinas at Grand Isle, Louisiana. This was actually taken right at sunrise. This one as well, next to it, was a group of local fishermen who had come down and just put their boat into the water. It was probably about 7 o'clock in the morning at that point. We were there a week after the waters were reopened for fishing, so there was a lot of excitement and a lot of activity with fishermen that had been without the ability to fish for 3 months that all of a sudden were able to get back out on the water. So it was a very exciting time. This was just a bizarre image that was captured by Terrell, the photographer. This truck submerged in the water just outside of Grand Isle. You know, who knows how long that truck's been there, but this image was actually captured in almost complete darkness. This was about an 8-minute exposure. It's a very, very, very beautiful image here. This next image is on the bridge going onto Grand Isle. And what you're seeing here is basically, this is the local community coming together in the evenings to do what they do best, which is enjoy fishing. This is sort of a nightly ritual. They come out to the bridge, they cast their line over and catch their meals for the next day. So we spent a lot of time on this bridge and interviewed a lot of the locals and got the perspective of the people who live and die by the water. This next image is Josie, who runs the Port Commission in Grand Isle. So she's sort of like the tourism ambassador. Josie helped us out in the most amazing way. We didn't have a room booked before we went down because I mistakenly thought, well, the tourism's been hit so hard, there'll be plenty of rooms. What I didn't take into account was that Grand Isle was basically ground zero for the cleanup effort, and all of the rooms were booked. So Josie made some calls for us and ended up getting us a house on the beach, a 6-bedroom house, that it was a family home. It was like their vacation home. They didn't know us from Adam, and they left the key out, and we were able to stay there for a couple $100. It was an incredible experience, and it was because she was just wonderful and really wanted us to come down and have a good time. This next image is Daryl Arnold, and the one next to it is his mother and his girlfriend. They are Katrina survivors in Pearlington, Mississippi. Daryl was a pretty remarkable individual. He had a lot of stories of Hurricane Katrina and other subsequent storms. And he saves all kinds of things that other people have discarded and basically rehabilitates them and makes them useful again. They rode out Katrina for 2 days, living in their boat that was tied to a tree floating in their front yard. He pulled his mother from the house just as the water was coming up over her head. I mean, it was just a remarkable story. But they're very resilient. They've been there, they're not going anywhere, they're rebuilding this huge house on 17-foot stilts. I mean, it's an unbelievable sight when you drive up, but they've been living in a trailer for almost 6 years now since the hurricane, because the house isn't done yet. Really remarkable guy, had all kinds of stories to tell. And again, his mother Betty and his girlfriend Shelley. This next one is Lori Bosarge, and this is Coden, Alabama, just outside of Portersville Bay, which is very close to Dauphin Island. We ran into Lori totally serendipitously. We were on our way to Dauphin Island on the last day of our expedition, and we were cruising through the bayou, and I saw these painted signs out in the yard that really captured my attention. A couple of the signs, one of them said dispersant, and it had a skull and crossbones on it. The other one said how to save the Gulf, pray. They're very provocative images, and we turned the car around and we pulled into the driveway, and she came out and talked with us, and we ended up having this really deep conversation with Lori that lasted about 2 hours. And she is very vocal about what's going on, what continues to go on down on the Alabama coast, and she really wanted to get the word out that there was more to the story than people were hearing on the news, and that, You know, she had some serious concerns about the safety of the seafood and the safety of the water. You know, she was very disturbed by the fact that the locals in her community were completely trusting of the water and the seafood when she basically was seeing all of this stuff going on. She was seeing this dispersant, you know, a quarter of a mile from her house on the state docks. She knew what was happening. It was, you know, it was very apparent that there was more going on than people were being told. So she actually came up to our event that we held in October and was one of our guest speakers, and we're in touch with Lori at least once a week or so. We hear from her. So she's sort of our line to the Alabama coast in terms of what's going on down there and what continues to happen. And this final image here is some fishermen catching oysters in Porterville Bay, which is just next to the state docks, which Lori had told us about, where basically the cleanup operation was stationed. So when we drove over there, it was a very busy area, this dock area. There was an oil or a boat washing station with these huge containers of unknown materials, and it was just sort of a creepy scene. And yet here these people were, you know, just, you know, down the street, you know, catching oysters and catching fish. And it sort of really brought to the surface how, you know, a lot of people can just turn a blind eye to what's going on and pretend that everything is okay and that everything's back to normal. But there was evidence all around that it wasn't okay and that it wasn't back to normal. So that's why we continue to monitor the story, because we feel like there's a lot more going on than people realize, and there's an ongoing impact that we all need to be aware of, and take a look at, you know, what role we all play in that system, because that's really what it's about. You know, we need to learn from it, and we need to make changes in our own behavior, because what we do has an impact on other people, and that's sort of why I got involved and why I continue to follow the story.